Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're talking about Astra space stock, or ticker ASTR, and just what has happened to the share price over the last few months or so. It has came down massively from its high of $19.55 and is now well below the $10 SPAC price that it was originally at before it merged with its predecessor. So what are we going to do with this company? Are we going to hold out? Are we buying more? Are we selling? What are we going to do? Well, take a look at this analysis and then we'll make our minds up for ourselves. Catch you in there. Hey guys, welcome to the Astra space stock page, ticker ASTR, share price $5.98, $5.94 pre-market, and as we can see it's come down from the 8th of February and it's almost glory days so far at $19.55 through to $6 a share, and there's a few reasons for that. It's now completed its outstanding public warrants, so all the shares are now all the original available shares at the SPAC process are now available to buy on the market or available to be sold on the market. So some people from the early investors have done some profit taking, which hasn't helped the share price. Space stocks as a whole have been absolutely hammered. SPAC stocks have been hammered. Growth stocks have been hammered. So this company's been affected by all of that, and it still came out with $6 per share. It's also been hit by a Kerrisdale Capital short report, which we'll touch on a little bit later. But firstly, I'm going to just quickly breeze over and remind everybody what exactly we invested in. So we'll just also quickly, for 2020, its loss of revenue was $68 million cash burn, because it's a pre-revenue company, of course. And it's rated at the moment by analysts as a whole with an average price target of 11. It's currently at $6 a share, below the low from analysts of $9. So there's a little bit of a margin in that in terms of what the analysts have to say. So what does Astra actually do? Well, it's a small satellite launching service from Earth in two locations, Cape Canaveral in Florida and Kodiak in Alaska, but soon they hope to be able to pack this into the back of an aircraft and be able to launch satellites from anywhere in the world that will host them. So this is the sort of thing that they aim to be able to get into space: 630 kilos to lower Earth orbit, 500 to mid-inclination and 335 kilos to SSO. And then that is the diameter of the sort of rocket capsule, the payload capsule. And then we're going to dive into, I've already talked about the redemption of the warrants. Then we're going to dive into the investing presentation that was dated December 2021. So this is not that old, and it's still talking about all the positives of space over the coming years and decades. It still says that it has $150 million worth of orders in its order backlog and a $1.2 billion pipeline. Nothing about the company has changed there. It is aiming to get at least one rocket per month into orbit this year. So that will be 12 rockets. If all of them go without a hitch, then that's going to obviously improve the share price massively, and they've got a rocket scheduled to be launched in this month of January, so keep an eye out for that, because that might affect the share price quite positive as well. So small satellites, low cost to launch. This is what it's about, trying to get small satellites into lower Earth orbit in the most economical way possible with a small rocket. Small rockets mean that it can go to be done far cheaper in terms of distance, in terms of satellite price, in terms of launch price. Everything scales down to mass production, which is what they're aiming for, the Model T of rocket launches. They're aiming to be able to 10 times increase their rocket launch volume for 2021, which would just be one a month, and then again for 2022 try and get that down to one a week, and then eventually towards one a day towards the end of 2025. They're aiming to be the Model T for the space industry, building the rockets as cheaply but as safely and competitively as they can. If they can achieve this, then that will be absolutely huge for the company, because they will undercut every single one of their competitors. Now there is some risk in that, of course, because if you try and do stuff on the cheap sometimes, especially in the space side of things, then that often ends in failure. But SpaceX has proved that you can reuse rockets, and who would have thought that that was possible 20 years ago? People would have laughed at you if you said they could use rockets. So now let's see if we can make them, especially for only just transporting payloads, out of cheaper materials, and see if that can actually be achieved. They've put the effort in, they've proven that it works, so why not, essentially? Space is at an inflection point. They've got many people they're prepared to work with, and the way space is going forward through to 2029, the sector is growing, there is no doubt about that. They're aiming to provide rapid, portable and global and affordable launch services. In that, they're aiming to dwarf every other rocket manufacturer going forward, with up to 300 launches a year. Now, that is a little bit unfair because these are going to be small, relatively quick payload projects. So the likes of SpaceX is never going to do 300 launches a year, not anytime soon anyway, because their rockets are extremely expensive and they need to build them more, and they take up actual people. So that is never going to be the sort of thing that SpaceX does, at least not in the next few years or so. Maybe when the company's going to Mars and sending starships out that way, maybe that'll become a thing, but I still think that SpaceX will be below 100 launches a year for the considerable future. But Astra, because of the rate that it can produce its rockets at and the material that it makes them out of, there is a chance that it can significantly boost to one a week relatively quickly. In recent news, they launched the 0007 successfully in November 2021, and the next launch is slated for January 2021. So we will await that with bated breath. If that succeeds, it will have a payload on board, then that is a big tick in the box for this company. They've also fired up the first electric propulsion engine in space thanks to the acquisition of Apollo Fusion. That is a very positive thing for another day to talk about. Basically, as you can see, they're still a loss-making company at the moment, but they still have plenty of cash to play with, 378 million. Their cash runway is quite long. They've got a lot of orders in the pipeline, so they should be able to start ramping up and start making it'll be a small profit, a small revenue stream at first, but that should soon ramp up quite quickly over the next year to 2 years or so. And then the fourth quarter financial outlook is roughly the same, to be fair. Lastly, I just want to move on to exactly what I was on about, where the Carisdale Capital has slammed the company. Basically, since they've been renewable, they say the being cheap and off the shelf isn't necessarily a good thing for the company, and the promising 300 launches a year by 2025 is perhaps fanciful. They compare the company to SpaceX, and I don't think the two are, obviously they both operate in the space sector, but they're not doing the same thing. They are, okay, SpaceX launches cargo, but it launches an awful lot of heavy cargo and people as well, which requires an awful lot more oomph to get it up there, and an awful lot of checks extra for the sake of sending people for safety purposes. I know satellites are quite expensive, but when they're smaller satellites, they're going to be less expensive. When you're launching it in the most cost-effective way, which is exactly what Astra is promising, there is a bit of a differential in what each market is going for right there. So right now, Carisdale opened a short position in the company. It released a short report because it wants everybody to dump off their shares, and that's exactly what has happened. So they've made their money, essentially. They also said that the share price would absolutely collapse with 91 million shares being available to send the stock to the ground. That didn't really happen. In line with everything else that absolutely happened, being at a share price of $6 still isn't actually too bad, in line with the other market conditions and market sentiment at the moment. I'm not entirely too fussed by the Carisdale report, to be fair. They've done it before in numerous companies to open their short positions, and they make money out of doing that, and they make sure that this short report, basically slagging the company off, gets as far and wide as possible so they can make as much money as possible. So that going forward, I'm not too fussed about, as long as the rocket launch goes well in January, a further rocket launch goes well in February, and so on, and the company isn't going to sell a heck of a lot more shares, or it doesn't achieve the launches, or it pushes launches back. As long as they stick to the track record that they're sticking to, that is a good thing in my opinion. So, as mentioned, company Astra has been absolutely smashed at the moment by numerous market conditions. It could not have been a worse through no fault of its own, in a worse position in the market at the moment. It's a space stock which everybody has exited. Growth stocks are being hammered, SPACs are being hammered, and it's been hit by a short report all at the same time, all within the past 4 to 8 weeks or so. If the launch goes well in January and subsequent launches go well in Feb and March, and it continues to deliver on what it actually says without any pushbacks, without any failures, then I do believe that the share price can recover. It's not going to bolt straight back to $20, don't get me wrong about that, but it could easily make it back to 10 to 15 with successive rocket launches going well, and then money returning to the market with the growth stocks actually not being hammered quite so much, etc., and sentiment towards growth stocks improving. Hope you enjoyed today's video, guys. Absolutely excellent to speak to you all again. I'll see you in another episode. Catch you later.